Ruth Langsford has always been known as the calm, warm presence on television, the smile that reassures viewers, the gentle laugh that makes everything feel lighter. But recently, that familiar glow has been shaken. Those closest to her noticed it first, the pauses, the softer voice, the way her eyes seemed to hold back something she wasn't ready to share. Because behind the scenes, life had taken a sudden and emotional turn. Eamonn Holmes, the man she has shared decades of laughter, partnership, and unforgettable moments with, was facing a serious health challenge. And for Ruth, this wasn't just news, it was personal. It was frightening. It was the kind of moment that makes time slow down and forces you to rethink everything you thought was certain. Friends say Ruth tried to stay strong at first. She joked the way she always does. She kept the mood light, even throwing in her signature humor, the kind that usually makes Eamonn roll his eyes and smile at the same time. But strength, when carried too long, eventually finds a way to crack. And when it did, the tears came quietly. Eamonn Holmes has never been one to hide his emotions. Viewers have seen him angry, joyful, sarcastic, and deeply sentimental. But those who know him best say this period has tested him in a way few things ever have. Health struggles don't just affect the body, they touch confidence, independence, and identity. For a man who has spent a lifetime speaking clearly, thinking quickly, and commanding attention, needing help was never easy. Ruth understood that better than anyone. At home, the dynamic shifted in small but meaningful ways. Ruth became the quiet organizer, managing appointments, checking medications, making sure meals were just right. But she also remained Ruth, teasing Eamonn for leaving socks in the wrong place, laughing when he tried to pretend he was absolutely fine, and reminding him, often, that stubbornness is not a medical treatment. Those close to the couple say some of their most touching moments happened not during serious conversations, but during laughter. Eamonn cracking a joke about hospital food, Ruth responding with mock outrage and promising to sneak in something better. In those moments, illness lost some of its power. Yet there were nights when the house fell silent, moments when Ruth sat alone, replaying doctors' words in her mind, wondering what the future might look like. Not the public future, the headlines, the cameras, but the private one. Morning routines, shared glances across the room, the comfort of knowing the person you love is okay. One source described Ruth as brave but human, strong enough to keep going, but honest enough to feel overwhelmed. When Ruth finally opened up emotionally, it wasn't dramatic. There were no big speeches, just tears that spoke for themselves. Tears of fear, tears of love, tears of exhaustion from holding it together for so long. Eamonn noticed immediately. According to those present, he reached for her hand and joked, gently, that she wasn't allowed to cry unless he cried first. It was classic Eamonn, humor used as armor. Ruth laughed through her tears, shaking her head, reminding him that rules don't apply to feelings. Their connection in that moment said everything. This isn't just a story about health challenges, it's a story about partnership. About two people who have spent years side by side through career highs, public scrutiny, and personal struggles, now facing something that can't be solved with a clever comment or a TV smile. But if there's one thing Ruth and Eamonn have always shared, it's resilience. Friends say Eamonn has good days and difficult days. On the good ones, he's determined, upbeat, and full of plans. On the harder ones, Ruth becomes his anchor, calm, encouraging, reminding him that progress doesn't have to be fast to be meaningful. And when Eamonn feels frustrated, Ruth doesn't lecture, she listens. Sometimes she laughs with him, sometimes she just sits beside him, letting silence do the work. That kind of love doesn't need words.
What makes their story so powerful is its honesty. There's no pretending everything is perfect, no polished version of reality, just two people navigating uncertainty together, holding on to humor when they can and honesty when they can't. Fans who have followed their journey for years feel deeply connected to this chapter, not because it's tragic, but because it's real. Because everyone understands what it's like to fear losing something precious, to love someone and wish you could take their pain away. Ruth's tears weren't a sign of weakness, they were proof of devotion. And Eamonn's vulnerability wasn't defeat, it was courage. Despite the challenges, those close to them say there's still plenty of laughter in their home. Ruth teasing Eamonn about his dramatic sighs, Eamonn joking that Ruth would run the world better than anyone. Even in difficult moments, their personalities shine through. Romance, too, hasn't disappeared. In fact, some say it's grown quieter, deeper, and more meaningful. Less about grand gestures, more about small acts of care. A cup of tea placed just right. A look that says, "I'm here." A shared smile after a long day. This chapter of their lives isn't easy, but it's authentic, and in many ways it shows a kind of love that's stronger than the polished stories we usually see. As Ruth continues to support Eamonn, she's also learning to give herself permission to feel, to cry when she needs to laugh when she can, and to lean on others without guilt. And Eamonn, facing his own challenges, is learning something too, that being cared for doesn't make him weak, it means he's loved. Together, they're proving that even in sad news, there can be warmth. Even in fear, there can be humor, and even in uncertainty, there can be hope. This story isn't over. It's still being written, one honest moment at a time. And for everyone watching, listening, and quietly rooting for them, it's a reminder that love isn't about avoiding hardship. It's about facing it together, hand in hand, with tears, laughter, and everything in between. If this story touched your heart, stay connected, share your thoughts, and keep kindness close. Because behind every headline, there are real people, real emotions,
As the days
and real
passed,
love.
something quietly changed between Ruth Langsford and Eamonn Holmes. Not in a dramatic way, not the kind of change people notice immediately. It was softer than that, subtler, almost invisible to anyone who wasn't paying close attention. Mornings became slower. Eamonn, who once rushed through his routine with practiced confidence, now took his time. Ruth noticed how he paused before standing, how he sighed just a little longer than usual. And every time she was there, pretending she didn't notice, offering help without making it feel like help. She would joke, "Don't worry, I wasn't planning on racing you today anyway." And Eamonn would smirk, replying, "Good, I'd win, obviously." They both knew it wasn't true, but laughter made it easier. At night, when the house finally grew quiet, Ruth often lay awake listening to Eamonn's breathing. It wasn't fear, exactly, it was awareness, the kind that comes when you realize how deeply someone's presence is woven into your life. She reached for his hand more often now. Sometimes Eamonn squeezed back. Sometimes he joked that she was stealing all the blankets again. And sometimes neither of them said anything at all. Silence, when shared, felt less heavy. Friends who visited noticed the tenderness between them, the way Ruth adjusted Eamonn's cushion without thinking, the way Eamonn watched Ruth move around the room as if memorizing her. One close friend later said it felt like watching two people fall in love again. Not the loud, exciting kind, but the steady, unshakable kind. Of course, there were hard days, too. Days when Eamonn felt frustrated with his own body, when simple tasks felt like battles. On those days, Ruth didn't try to fix him. She didn't rush him or offer empty encouragement. Instead, she sat beside him and said, "It's okay to be annoyed. I'd be annoyed too."
That honesty meant everything. Eamonn once admitted, quietly, that the hardest part wasn't the pain or the uncertainty, it was the fear of becoming a burden. Ruth looked at him, almost offended, and said, "If you're a burden, then I've been carrying you happily for years." He laughed. She smiled. The moment passed, but the reassurance stayed. Despite everything, humor remained their secret weapon. When Eamonn complained about doctors using too many long words, Ruth teased that it was because he talked too much already. When Ruth worried aloud, Eamonn pretended to yawn dramatically, earning himself a playful glare. These moments didn't erase the sadness, but they softened it. Romance, too, found new ways to exist, not through grand dates or public gestures, but through simple acts. Ruth cooking Eamonn's favorite meal and pretending it was no big deal. Eamonn leaving her little notes, sometimes silly, sometimes heartfelt, always unmistakably him. One note simply read, "Still my favorite person, even on the tough days." Ruth kept it. There were evenings when they talked about the past, memories from early career days, inside jokes no one else would understand, moments that shaped them. And sometimes they talked about the future, carefully, honestly, not with fear, but with realism. Ruth once said softly, "No matter what happens, we'll deal with it together." Eamonn nodded, adding, "You don't get rid of me that easily." That was Eamonn's way of saying thank you. The emotional toll did show on Ruth from time to time. There were moments when the weight of being strong caught up with her, when tears came unexpectedly, while washing dishes or folding clothes, or hearing a song that reminded her of easier times. Eamonn saw those tears, and for once he didn't try to joke them away. He simply held her and said, "You're allowed to be tired." That sentence mattered more than he knew. What makes their story resonate so deeply is not the sadness itself, but the way they carry it, with dignity, with humor, with love that doesn't need to perform for anyone else. They aren't pretending everything is fine. They're choosing to face reality together. And in doing so, they're showing that even when life delivers difficult news, it doesn't take away everything beautiful. Sometimes it brings the important things into sharper focus. As Ruth continues to stand beside Eamonn, and as Eamonn continues to fight with determination and heart, one thing is clear. This chapter, though painful, is filled with connection, with warmth, with love that refuses to disappear. And for everyone following their journey, it's not just a story of sadness, it's a reminder that even in the hardest moments, love still finds a way to smile.